there. How is everyone on this Tuesday?
Great, Jenny. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Let's see. Looks like we have some more people joining. It is 11 o'clock and we have quite a bit to get through, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First update I wanted to give was on the department-wide summer party. I think Melissa was referring to it as the summer extravaganza. Just an update there. We've actually decided for the department gathering, we're gonna move that to the fall. And the reason is all of the divisions are having their summer parties over the next month and a half, and we don't want to conflict with any of those and also overwhelm everybody with gatherings. So we're going to do that in the fall. For those of you who work in remote areas of the state, just a heads up, we will be having a gathering here along the Wasatch Front, but we will also be doing one in the northern part of the state, central part of the state, and southern part of the state. So Melissa and others are starting to coordinate and work on those gatherings. You'll see dates that are coming out soon, so you can get those on your calendars, but we just wanted to make you aware that those have been pushed to the fall, and we will be holding those four. So northern, Wasatch Front, central, and southern, so that way we can meet with employees across the state. You don't have to travel up to Salt Lake if you live in a rural part of the state. Next thing I wanted to talk about was our new peer-to-peer recognition board that's on the intranet. So those of you who haven't been to the intranet, just as a reminder for everyone else, it's employee.govops.utah.gov. I'm going to see if I can share my screen for just a second. All right, can you all see that? Melissa, give me a nod if you can see my screen. Okay, so on the intranet, there is this new section here that says employee kudos. If you click on it, there is a button to submit kudos, and then you'll see the kudos board as well. So a big kudos to Brittany and Joseph for designing this board. What we wanted to do is give an opportunity for some peer-to-peer recognition and for employees to be able to recognize each other and share some of the amazing things that you were doing. So please go to the intranet and feel free to start posting there. I think it's mentioned somewhere that when it gets filled up, that we will pull it down, save those, and start a new board. So just wanted to give a shout out there to that team for building that, and then also share that with you so we can start seeing it fill out. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Q1 initiatives for fiscal year 23. So we're 19 days into the new fiscal year. And I shared this last month, but for me, year one was a lot of learning and meeting with employees and meeting with our customers and identifying and understanding what the various divisions within government operations do. And year two, we're really focused on becoming. So working toward streamlining processes and implementing the things that make us government operations and that fulfill the intent of the consolidation when this was originally discussed. So the things that we're going to be focused on, I've got several items, and I just want to emphasize that the purpose behind these changes are, number one, to create consistency across our departments, so that way all 9 divisions are handling things in the same fashion. Number two, transparency. We want to make sure that employees throughout the organization understand where we're headed and the reasons why behind we're making any changes. And then number three is employee engagement. So making sure that as we are looking to build out government operations, that we're sharing feedback with you and getting feedback from you, especially as it relates to the feedback that our customers are giving us. So some of the things that we're going to be focused on as a department for Q1, number one is an employee recognition program. That includes manager to employee, peer-to-peer, and then incentives and non-cash awards. And so we've got a start on that, and we'll be working toward building that out and sharing that with the rest of the department by the end of Q1. The second one is a department compensation strategy. And Marilee spent a lot of time last month talking about this. I've tasked her with leading that effort. Again, this will be to create consistency across the department, including timelines and deadlines, and also providing transparency and insight to employees so that you know exactly what you need to do in order to qualify for an ASI and how those are awarded. The third one is leadership development. So we've been meeting with some other agencies who have built very robust leadership development programs, and there are quite a few amazing things that they've done that we want to incorporate into government operations. So we're going to start to build that out. Some of this will be required for managers and supervisors as we align with HB 104 and need to provide that level of training. But we're also going to include some additional leadership development trainings, such as how to have crucial conversations and how to build culture within an organization and a team and trust, and dealing with change management, especially as we are going through so many changes. And so we will be building up that program over Q1 so that way we can implement it across the department. And again, really utilizing a lot of what's been built by other agencies that has been successful. Next one is the mentorship program that's actually started, and Chris Hughes can give an update there. We had, I believe, 16 pairings for our mentorship program, but continuing to build that out and grow it across the department. The next one is a department-wide communication strategy. So we will be hiring a public information officer for the department who will be coordinating with each of the divisions on a communication strategy. And that's number one internally, to make sure that we are building a communication strategy for our employees of the department. And number two, externally with our stakeholders, to make sure the legislature is aware of the great things that our department is doing, that we're engaging with other agencies so they feel like they understand where we're headed and the whys and all of that as well. So we're excited to bring that person on and get that strategy built out. We have the Moss Adams ISF audit, which started on July 1. This is an external auditor that we've hired to come in and audit all of our ISFs to make sure that we are meeting the requirements of statutes and understanding where we're at with our rates. A lot of our agencies, a lot of our customers have asked for us to simplify some of our rate processes and also to provide more transparency into what we charge and what it's covering to help them understand. And also give them more information earlier on so they can appropriately budget. So that has started and will be finished in Q1, and we are excited for the insight and direction that we'll get from that. Customer feedback. We, as an executive director's office, have gone out this year and met with all of our agency customers, and we finished our last one last week and are working now to get that feedback back to the division directors so that way they can start working with you and your teams to identify some of the concerns that our customers have raised or opportunities for improvement that our customers have raised, so we can begin to start strategizing and identifying ways that we can address those concerns. So you'll see that coming within Q1 as well. And then last but not least is an internal audit schedule. So the department itself has not had an internal audit team. One of our divisions, though, DTS, has. And so what we have done is, effective July, we have moved that team from DTS to the executive director's office, and that team will now be the internal audit team for the department as a whole. So we're excited to have them dive in. This is something that the Office of the Legislative Auditor General and the Governor's Office has strongly encouraged every agency to make sure that we have an internal audit function and that it is consistent and ongoing. So Scott Tingley, are you on? Oh, I see you. Hi, Scott. I want to introduce you all to Scott Tingley. He is going to be the director of our internal audit team, and we are excited to have him lead that. And Scott, I'd just like to have you spend a few minutes talking about your vision and role of the internal audit team for GovOps.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. I'm really excited to join the EDO team and kind of chart a new course for the department, and one that I think will be really beneficial for all of us. And you know, there's a procession of auditors that we love to play gotcha and point out faults and errors and mistakes. And really my philosophy towards auditing is that we are here as independent and objective observers to help you in each of your functions and processes, and offer honest feedback when it's needed, and also recommendations, on how we can improve. And I'm really looking forward to, working with my team and getting to know each and every one of you and what you do, and understanding, your risks, your challenges, your pain points. And so yeah, I'm really excited to be here at the department. So
thank you, Scott. And we're excited to have Scott. Just some background. He came from Salt Lake County. I can't remember how many years you were there.
I was there 14 years. And for the last 7, I was the elected Salt Lake County auditor. So.
Okay, wonderful. And he built the auditing program for Salt Lake County. And so he knows how to do this from the ground up, which is what he's going to be doing for government operations. So we're really excited to have Scott and his team here and building that out for us. I think it was Marilee who referred to it as free consulting, and that's how we're viewing it as well. It's really an opportunity for us to have a partnership within our department to look at some of our processes and make sure that we're doing things the right way, and then work to improve in the areas that are identified by the audit. And we'd much rather do this internally than wait for the auditor's office, either Auditor Dougal or the audit or like to come in and find it for us. So we're excited to be very proactive in this. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right. So those are the big things as a department anyway that we have on our list for Q1. I know each of the divisions has initiatives that they're going to be working on as well, but we wanted to provide some insight as to what we're going to be working on at the executive director's level for the department as a whole. And then the last thing I have on my agenda before we get into questions, I know this one will probably generate a lot of questions, is we finally have an official telework policy for government operations. So if you go to the intranet, there is a drop-down menu for policies, and it is policy number 8. It says telework. And this one took us quite a bit of time. I want to give kudos and shout out to the policy committee. They spent so much time going through this. I thought it would be much simpler than it was, but there were just a lot of interesting things to think about as we, oh, sorry, I'm muffled. Is it still muffled? You can hear me fine? Okay. All right, so as we looked at different nuances and such for a department of our size, but the policy committee has finalized that and it is available on the intranet. So we encourage you all to go out and read it. We did do a town hall with managers and supervisors, so we've gone through the policy with all of them and had an opportunity to respond to some questions. We did have some questions come through via email, and I'm sure that this town hall will also generate some additional questions. So we will be compiling all of those into a written document that we can get on the intranet. So that way people know where to go to get answers to any questions, some of the frequently asked questions that are coming up. Just to give you all a heads up, we would like to have these new telework agreements signed and in place within the next 30 days. So about mid-August. Melissa, I can't remember if we've given a specific date to managers and supervisors.
August 19th.
August 19th. Okay, so we'd like to have anyone who is working remotely, we would like to have you to have a signed telework agreement for fiscal year 2023 to us by August 19th. So please work with your supervisor in order to get those completed. Again, they've been trained on that in that process. It's done through Adobe Sign. I do recognize that some issues have come up with Adobe Sign. So if you have any issues working with it, please submit a ticket through ServiceNow and DTS can get you help there. Some of the common things that I just want to make sure that we address in here. We did put together some guiding principles and definitions as to what we mean by an approved alternate work location, the difference between remote work and surge work. We've defined in there what a rural employee, what rural means, and that's based upon what that definition at the state level, which really means rural applies to all state of Utah counties except for Weber, Davis, Salt Lake, Utah, Summit, and Tooele. Any other counties besides those ones are considered rural Utah for the purpose of telework, and that's standard throughout the state. We do get into some specifics as to the responsibility of supervisors and the responsibility of employees as it relates to working remotely, whether on a telework agreement or from a surge perspective. We've also identified and detailed when mileage reimbursement is allowed and appropriate, when you can count your hours if you're a remote working employee. We've put together some information on equipment that the state or that the department will provide to remote work employees and how that is accounted for. And then we have some other general provisions in there as questions came through that we wanted to make sure that were identified, things such as security as it relates to DTS rules and policies, acceptable use of IT resources, et cetera. All of that is clearly outlined in the telework policy. And then you'll also see some links at the bottom of the document, which align to our telework policy. There will be a link to the telework acknowledgement agreement form, and that agreement form, again, that needs to be completed over the next 30 days, has each of you working with your supervisors to determine when you will be working remotely. So that way you and your supervisor are on the same page as to when you will be working at an approved alternate location. It has a workplace safety checklist for your reference. This came from OSHA, so you are encouraged to look through that and discuss any concerns you have with your manager. It also has a link to the remote work guide, which was created by GOPB for the state. Some information on the ergonomics program that's handled through the Division of Risk Management, and then a fleet reservation form as well, if you have a need to reserve a fleet vehicle, if you're going to be traveling to another location. So all that's in that telework policy. Please feel free to review it. Talk to your managers and supervisors if you have questions. And if they can't answer your questions, feel free to submit those to Melissa. She's gathering those questions for us so we can put that document together and make sure we have an FAQs page there. So just looking at questions, someone tried to sign it, but the link didn't work. Can you post the link in the chat so they can do so? It looks like somebody has posted the link. That's great. The telework policy is in there. And like I said, I know some people have had some issues with Adobe eSign. So that's where we encourage you to place a ticket with DTS if you're having any issues with that, and they can help get those resolved. Someone asked about contractors if they need to sign. No, this is just for state employees. So if you're working with contractors, that if they're going to be working remotely or in an alternate location, that should be part of their contract with the division. So contractors do not need to assign this or to sign this. It's just for state employees. Oh, George just answered that. I should have just looked through there. Any questions before we move on to general questions about teleworking or the telework policy? I know most of you haven't had an opportunity to review it yet, but any questions that we can address before we move on to general questions that have come in through the intranet? All right, I'm not seeing any yet, but feel free to post them throughout the next little while as we go through some of the other questions that have come through. And if you have questions on anything else that I covered, I know I went through that fairly quickly as far as what our Q1 initiatives are, feel free to post those as well. We did have several questions come through the intranet that I want to make sure that we get to. One of the things was about the telework policy and how it relates to distractions. So two things I want to cover real quick with the telework policy. The first one, we do expect that if you're working remotely that you still maintain a professional atmosphere. So it is up to one of the employee responsibilities is to make sure that you have appropriate childcare, pet care, whatever it is that you need, because you should be engaging with your fellow coworkers and with customers as if you were in the office. So we do expect that workstations are free of distractions while at an alternate remote location. The other thing that we are going to be adding to the telework policy is an expectation that when you are working remotely and virtually with your coworkers and you're on Zoom meetings or Google Meet or any other kind of virtual meeting, that you do have cameras on. One of the things that we're really finding is that when cameras are off, there is this lack of connection with your team members, and also an unknown whether you're feeling engaged and all of that. So we do want to set the expectation that, again, even though you're working remotely, we expect you to be interacting with your colleagues as if you were in the office. So the expectation will be that cameras are on during meetings, both internally and externally with customers. And again, free from distractions. So those things are going to be covered in our telework agreements and our telework policy. The next question that came through, as we talked about looking for an employee discount as it relates to internet, someone said, does purchasing realize we're talking about an employee discount for what they use at home? Yes, that is understood, and that is something that we are still looking into. Wendy, I'm not sure if you're on the line and want to address that, but it is something that we're continuing to look at to see if there are any possible ways to get some internet discounts with carriers for people who are working from home. Wendy, are you on
Yeah,
the line?
I'm here, Jenny.
Wendy?
Yes, we are. We are actually going to be putting out that RFI. We've actually had some outreach from some vendors as well who've started this discussion with some other states around telework. So we are taking a look to see what this could potentially look like. Just because of there may be some IT factors in there. We are engaging with DTS as well to make sure that we're making sure that we're going to be aware of bandwidth requirements and things like that. So an RFI should be out there in the next couple of weeks. We've been able to gather a little bit more information just from random vendor outreach that has come in from other states as well. So it's been really good, and we're moving forward with trying to see what we can provide as far as options for employees.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, some of the other questions that came through, and I will get to the ones that are in the chat. Just want to get through the spreadsheet real quick. This is an HR question. We have a couple of HR questions that I thought might take a little bit of time to go through. So John Barron, you're ready to go, right?
Let's give it a whirl.
The first one was about annual leave. So there is a policy right now that any time accrued over 320 hours is lost. I believe it's at the end of the year. So the question was, for some employees, it's really difficult to use the time that they accrue. And was there ever going to be a reconsideration of the policy on the 320-hour limit?
Wow. Well, let's start unpacking this, kids. First, it's good to see everybody. And I know I'm kind of taking over this meeting for half a second, but can you kind of sense that DGO EDO has got it figured out? All they're doing and all they're progressing on our behalf. I certainly am grateful for Chris, Marilee, and Jenny and the work that they're doing, and all the committees. It's for someone who's 18 months in and still learning how all this works. It's been really a treat to watch them progress these policies. Sometimes it's a slugfest, but they deserve a shout out every now and again as well, and grateful to consider them leaders within our organization. So thank you for that. To the question about 320 hours, first I did a little snooping. So this has been around for a long time. So whoever asked this question, I like it because I like to challenge why it's been around. I'd say that if I were to split this in areas of concern, I would say that 80% of the worry about reviewing a policy related to 320 hours, either expiring or growing that or is going to sit on the financial side, because this is a huge financial liability for all agencies. If we were to maybe make a rule or permission exceptions to pay this out, right, that becomes real tangible dollars that Director Reese would have to account for, request for, or potentially I'd have to help build a recommendation to go to the legislator and say, hey, we would like last year, that liability, for example, for fiscal year 21 was $115 million. We would need $115 million to start paying this out. And it gets really risky on the financial side. I know Janica had some opinions about this and would be able to speak to it, as well as GOPB. So when it comes to the second part of this, and if I could, I'll try to keep this succinct, is if 80% of it is financial liability, and that's really what it is, the 20% that worries me or that I do want to speak to is employees often can't take all their time off, right? Is you get to this point where you've accrued all of this, and then I, as an employee, I speak like you and think like you. It's, well, that value is gone. We're diminishing the value of time off. If one, you don't get to pay it out, or two, you never get to use it, the use and lose, right? I'm willing to share a kind of a crazy thought here that probably gets me in trouble, but I do want to share one thing. This is from our Gallagher-Bassett survey. If you don't know, I've talked about it before. Thumbs up, Jenny, you can see my screen. Thank you. So this is how the state relates to all other PTO or paid time off programs. we sit typically 20, and in some cases, depending on years of service, 25% above the market with time off. It's a tricky balance because recently in the governor's survey, 1,250 of the 9,000 employees, so roughly 25% of the employees, told us that time off package was actually the worst part of our compensation package. So 25% of you are like, yeah, it is the worst part. 75% of you, it's a great part. Now to the 25% of you, you may be saying it's the worst part because I never get to take the time off, right? So the way that I think about this, and over the next 2 to 3 years, or as fortunate or hopefully as lucky as enough as I am to work for the state, is I would call this, versus just going and asking for $115 million to pay this out, I'd be interested in potentially a rebalance or asking Director Reese and other agency leaders, can we go through a rebalance of the employee value proposition? If people aren't able to take their time off, how do we actually operationalize or find value in that for you? So I've spoken to that larger part. But if there's a need to have those accruals get bigger I saw a quick chat question, then the liability or the financial liability gets bigger as well. So if we were to go from 320 to 360, so an extra 40 hours that you can bring with you, of course, if we can negotiate or ask legislators for that. And if there's an appetite for that, I think as we start trying to modernize this employee value proposition, it's something we should consider. But typically a heavy financial burden that HR's policies typically need to line up to. But I do worry about the value of our time off for sure. It's tricky.
Thanks,
I don't
John.
have an not the best answer again.
I would just add to what John is saying is that it's something that we're talking about, and fortunately it's something that the legislature is talking about right now as well. Our legislators are recognizing that employee retention and recruitment is a concern, and not just for the state, but for many employers throughout Utah. We have a really low unemployment rate and a considerable amount of growth, and so how do we make sure that we are staying on top of employee recruitment and retention? And so one of the committees that we report to in the interim has asked DHRM to come back in the fall and present some recommendations on ways that we can address employee retention and recruitment, whether that relates to salary or benefits. And they've asked us to really be creative and to think outside the box and to come to them with some recommendations on what we can do to improve that. So DHRM is tasked with that. They're already digging into it. And these are conversations I expect that we'll continue to have, especially through the next legislative session as we try to address some of these concerns that are coming up. All right, John, the next HR question is really specifically to DHRM, but in our incentive awards policy, which is policy number 4, it says that DHRM employees are not eligible for cash incentive awards unless awarded by the Division of Human Resource Management, which is a little different from the 8 other divisions where another agency other than GovOps can give someone a cash incentive award. So the question is, why is DHRM treated differently when it comes to this?
Thank you for the question. For me, to the DHRM employees, and I know we're spending some time together this week as a team, and it may not seem fair as there's 455 others on the team from GovOps. Every leader thinks their agency is a unicorn, right? Or a snowflake or special. And I actually can make a really good conversation about why DHRM employees should be treated differently, even in relation to our sister ISF organizations and divisions that we're on the call with. HR professionals, typically we have about 80 of our team, so about 75% of the headcount in DHRM sits in the field. And about, I would say every other week, I'm briefed on a case where an employee, not a DHRM employee, says, I feel like DHRM is really loyal to that leader. And my first reaction is always to express gratitude. If our DHRM employees are doing their job the right way in the field, they should be very strategically aligned to our leaders. And I can sleep well at night knowing that they have never been compromised and they can make independent decisions from those leaders, which typically should be strategically aligned. However, if we were to allow cash compensation to be traded from the director of corrections to that field team, I worry about the independent decision making that those field teams would make, or that our employee relations director would make, or that our comp team would make. Therefore, the easiest way to ensure that we are good stewards of human capital and independent decision making is to not allow even the perception or the view of buying loyalty or of buying a loosening of a rule. And so for that reason, cash compensation is typically not permitted within DHRM employees to receive from another agency. There's two other quick reasons. One, not all agencies are created equal. I've learned that the hard way. Some agencies have more dollars than others, and it could become an internal equity issue within our team. Same for other sister agencies, respective of Director Reese's view to that. Third, also it's pretty, I'm not going to call it an easy workaround, but I love it when I get messages from these senior leaders or managers across the other agencies. They say, hey, I'd really like to give so-and-so $500 for doing their job. And then I usually call that person and say, I'm so grateful for what you do. And then I give them the $500, right? So that has absolutely happened. It's come from me. It's come from DHRM's budget. It's come from Director Reese. So we are able to reward our employees. I just don't love the exchange from agency leadership to DHRM employees because I'm trying to keep us as independent as possible.
Thank you, John. All right, let's get to some of the questions that have come through the chat. So someone asked about a budget to purchase webcams for employees that don't have one for remote meetings. Yes, please work with your managers and supervisors on equipment that you need to be able to do your job effectively if you are working remotely from home. So if that's an issue that you need to work through, then contact your manager or supervisor. For Wendy, is Emory Telecom included? So we're going to be sending out an RFI, and that allows companies to respond to us. Wendy, do you want to just talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, I certainly can. So with a request for information, that's basically us just gathering who's going to be able to provide any of these types of services. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we've had outreach from some of the larger providers, but we're definitely looking to engage with especially the more rural providers as well. I know that there are a lot of areas across the state where some of these bigger providers just don't go out there, and there's some smaller shops. But we definitely, if you've got some information for a specific provider in your area that you know they are the only ones out there, like Emory or somebody else messaged me separately and said Strata out in the Vernal Roosevelt area, please by all means feel free to email those over, and we will make sure to do outreach and make sure that they're aware of this information gathering effort that we're working through as well, so that way we can keep them engaged as we move forward.
Thanks, Wendy. Someone asked about LinkedIn Learning, if it's accessible for employees and how to request for it. And Melissa, you might have the most up-to-date information on that one.
So we no longer have a LinkedIn Learning contract for the department. They really didn't want to work with us on the licensing piece of it. They have their own method of operation for that, and it just wasn't going to work for us. So we no longer have that. If you are interested, I would encourage you to just talk to your division director, see if that's something that can be provided for your division. And I've got the contact information for our account rep, so I'm happy to pass that on to the division directors, and I can do that.
Thanks, Melissa. Talking about cameras on, somebody mentioned that sometimes the internet can be poor and not having everyone's video on can create better audio. Generally, and I'm happy to have somebody that is more tech savvy than I am address this if I'm destroying this, but generally speaking, it's going to be on the end of the user, their internet connection. So if you look at our telework policy under employee responsibilities, it's item number H, it does say employees are responsible to procure, maintain, and pay for internet service that will allow the employee to efficiently and effectively accomplish work tasks and immediately address any service or performance related issues with internet service. An example is bandwidth must be sufficient to support having your camera on for video calls. So that is clearly detailed in our telework policy that we do expect internet bandwidth to be sufficient to handle video calls. If it's an issue we're having within a building that the state is providing the internet, and I know that we do have some of our rural regional offices where bandwidth sometimes is an issue, then obviously we would have you just work with your teams on addressing how you can best conduct that meeting if it's a state bandwidth issue. Let's see, can the hours over 320 go to the leave bank? Let's see, Cass, are you on the line?
Yes, sorry.
Hi, Cass.
Hi, I was struggling to find the unmute button. So the answer to that question is yes, and they do. The agency generally opts in, so we can opt in to allowing that or opt out, and we've generally opted it.
Thanks. That was a nice and easy one. I'm not going to go through all the comments about the camera. Again, if you need to work with your supervisor or manager to get a webcam in order to utilize your screens at home, please coordinate with them. Let's see. Some people don't take time off because they don't have proper coverage for their position. This is an issue, and we're seeing it not just in government operations, but across agencies. I think one of the ones that is really struggling the most is Department of Corrections, where they just are struggling to recruit. And so it's really hard for people to take their time off. And that was one thing that John mentioned that we're working and making sure that we inform the legislature is, while we have this benefit, we do have a number of employees throughout the state who are unable to utilize that benefit if there are staffing shortages or other work projects that are on the horizon that prevent employees from being able to take that time off. And so that's an ongoing conversation that we're continuing to have as to how do we address that issue with employees not having the ability to use their leave, but then losing it if they don't use it. So something that we're hearing quite a bit, not just from us, but other agencies that we're keeping at the top of that discussion. Let's see, is the issue of why people are not taking their PTO examined? Yes, that's something that DHRM is continuing to look into. And again, it's unique to every agency as to why employees are not able to utilize their time off. So that is something that DHRM, that the team there is working agency by agency to better understand, because it's not the same across all 23,000 state employees. John, anything you want to add to that?
Other than just saying, I mean, this is such an intimate view of work-life balance and mental health, and it is top of mind. In many of these conversations, you know, this comes down to and our agency leaders choosing their staffing levels and then choosing how they budget to that and then attacking it that way. I'm not passing the buck. I'm suggesting I think we've been really good at running lean operations. So there are often times where there's not duplication efforts or backfill is appropriate, and that's a tough spot to be in. And my heart bleeds for those who have mental health issues and need to take time off, and the anxiety of coming back to 400 emails on a long week off, like those are very real. And again, I empathize with you. Don't have projected solutions today, but definitely engaging deeply in those conversations with legislators, the governors, Director Reese, and other leaders of the state.
John, the next one's going to be for you as well. The question is there an update on targeted pay increases? I do want to just address this first by saying the fiscal year 23 that were approved in the last legislative session, DHRM should be working with agencies to implement that. If the question is about future ones, John, you can address that, but I do want to let everyone know that I am hearing the legislature is expressing some concerns about economic downturns and possible recessions. And so anything that we're looking at exploring for the future, I just want to remind everyone that until it's passed by the legislature, there is no guarantee. So John, do you want to talk a little bit about targeted increases?
Thank you for this question. Targeted funding for this year did take effect June 25th. So I believe that first check where it will be realized actually hits this Friday. So you should, if your title, if your job was on targeted funding, and I believe we posted those on the GovOps website earlier this year, promptly after the approvals. You should know that, be aware of it. Hopefully have been communicated that. So yes, those should be realized. I do think there might be, it should show even in your hourly rate. I believe someone will correct me on your pay card. Director Reese is right. Moving forward, if you haven't known this cadence, again, I'm still learning it, is every October, DHRM and GovOps has an obligation to provide a recommendation to the governor about an overall compensation plan. We do identify roles that are typically out of market. I showed a slide from previous work we did with an external party. So this summer, we're building our recommendations as to, hey, Governor, here's what we think some targeted funding could look like. Last year was the largest targeted funding that I think the state had ever seen in total dollar amount. Roughly 25% of employees receive targeted funding. So if you're looking forward, the goal is to continue to move the needle on cash compensation or salary with targeted funding. However, there have been some conversations about a slowing of the economy and being aware of that, given the high demands of inflation. What a tricky spot to be in. I hope I answered the question that was, or the intent of the question.
And if not, feel free to post it back in the chat. Where do we find the telework forms to sign? So the telework policy, I think it was missing the link. Is there somewhere else that they can find it until that gets updated in the policy, Melissa?
I can send out all of the forms.
Okay.
And Jenny,
Yes.
the telework agreement is also available it's in Adobe Sign. So we provided the instructions to the managers and supervisors that tell them how to go access that telework agreement and get the process going in Adobe Sign. Hopefully they received that all today. And it's in the workflows, along with instructions for the supervisors and instructions for them to provide to the employees. So that's why there's not really a link to the Adobe Sign agreement itself, that they've got to go in and find it in the library.
Okay.
And let me also add to that, Rebecca and Jenny, we need you to use Adobe Sign because that's how it's being tracked.
Yeah.
Use Adobe Sign and you just do a PDF, we lose that tracking ability, and that's problematic.
Yeah, Adobe Sign will be able to provide reports for EDO, for anyone to track who's signed a telework acknowledgement agreement, how many there are, all the kinds of data that we have to report to the legislature as well. So.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rebecca and Mark. And this one's going to be for HR again as well. Either John or Cass, feel free to take this one. But sick leave is up over 500 hours. How long does it accumulate? Does any of it get lost? I don't know what the policy is for sick leave.
Cass.
Okay, can you hear me this time? Somebody told me I was way too quiet last time. It's because my computer switched to a different microphone. So if you are talking about current sick leave buckets, it will accrue until you leave. It is not that the third bucket of sick leave is not paid out and it isn't lost. It's just there for you to use.
Thanks, Cass. And the next one's going to be for you too. It's about that leave bank. It's saying that our current Department 150 does not participate in placing lost annual leave in the department's sick leave bank. I thought we did address that in our policy.
Well, we just barely became Department 150, so certainly we can make the decision each year. And she's probably correct that we haven't done it every year. Just depends on the balance of the sick leave bank that is out there, like that we already have. So in the past, the 140 didn't have a general leave bank, so we wouldn't have participated in that. And 110 and 100 last year had sufficient balances that they chose not to. But in other years, they would have in order to build it up where it is right now.
Okay, so I put it on my list. So that's a conversation that we'll have with Cass and get that outlined so everyone understands what we're doing. As far as somebody mentioned that your position was on the targeted list and you didn't see an increase, on that one, please feel free to reach out to Cass or your manager and have that conversation, and they can go over your specific position and any issues that exist there. And then it would be helpful to have the form itself as we discuss the schedule they want with our employees. Yeah, I think if we can show Rebecca and Mark, if we can have in our policy a link, maybe not to the Adobe form, but just to what the acknowledgement or the telework agreement looks like. So as people are getting ready to discuss, they have an idea of what they're going to be filling out. That would be helpful.
Yeah, it's been sent out to all managers and supervisors last week.
Okay.
And today again as well.
Good. So feel free to reach out to your manager and supervisor if you need to get access to that or start having that conversation. Oh, and Missy says you can download it from eSign. Okay, great. I think I got through all the questions that have come through the chat. If I've missed anyone, feel free to repost it. Any other questions that we can, oh, sorry, one more that came through the intranet that I skipped over. The last one that came through the internet was, does GovOps have a language stipend as other agencies do? Some agencies offer a certain dollar amount to employees that speak another language, such as Spanish, subject to passing a language speaking test. So this is not something that we do. I actually was curious about that. So I talked to a few other agencies, and the ones that do have it, it's for employees that engage with Utah citizens. And so social workers would be positions like that, where they're working with the public and need to interact with citizens who may not speak English. So we are really an internal facing agency. Our customers are other state agencies. That's not a stipend that we provide at this time. Those are all the questions through the internet. I think we got through all the ones that came in the chat. Any other questions that we can answer for you? I tried to keep today's open mostly for questions because I figured we'd have several as it related to the telework. John Barron asks, is GovOps the best agency to ever exist? And I'm just going to say yes. Any other questions we can answer? Okay, I'm not seeing any. As always, if you have questions, feel free to submit them through. Is Dirty Dough better than Crumble? I haven't tried Dirty Dough, but I see there's a lawsuit, and I've seen some
legally
amazing,
don't talk about that. Don't talk about it legally.
I've seen some amazing billboards. Some marketers are doing a great job with using this to their advantage. So I don't know. I can't answer that question. Maybe somebody else who has tried both. Maybe we need to have a cookie tasting contest at our summer or fall extravaganza where we grab cookies from all of the different places and decide as GovOps which one's the best. All right, thank you all for your time. I hope we were able to get through your questions. If I missed anything, as always, you can submit it through the internet and I can address it next month. If it needs to be addressed more quickly than that, you can go through your manager or supervisor. Our door and executive director's office is always open, and I respond to every email I get, so you're always welcome to send me an email. We know that more will come about the telework agreement, so we'll make sure we get those FAQs on the internet. Go to the internet, do the kudos board. We're really excited to see that in action. Thanks for your time, and we'll chat again soon. Bye.